Imagine this. You are standing in the middle of a bustling party, surrounded by waves of laughter and clinking glasses. Everyone is chatting animatedly, and you try your best to fit in, forcing a perfect smile and nodding along to the conversation, even though your heart is already exhausted. But when you return home alone at midnight and face the empty room, in that moment you suddenly realize, was that you, who is chatting and laughing in the crowd? Why do you always seek validation from others to prove your own worth? Why do you feel inexplicably lost when the unread messages on your social media turn to zero? You think that constantly catering and reaching out will bring you a sense of belonging, but you find that every act of fitting in is like injecting an anesthetic into your soul, making you gradually forget your true self in the illusion of warmth. Have you ever wondered if those circles you are so desperate to join are actually cutting you into countless fragmented personas? You disguise your life with carefully carded social media posts, arm your mind with trendy opinions, and shape your behavior according to others' expectations, only to lose the unadorned authentic when being needed becomes a survival necessity, and not being excluded becomes the ultimate pursuit. Are you embracing the world or burying your own vitality with your own hands? Next, let's tear apart the lies carefully woven by this era and see how the so-called fitting in traps you in an invisible cage. Have you ever wondered why the word unsociable instinctively scares you? According to Carl Jung's theory of the collective unconscious, the memory of living in groups formed over millions of years of human evolution has ingrained the fear that being abandoned by the group is equivalent to a death threat. This primal fear lurks in the depths of your subconscious like a hidden reef. When you step away from a social circle, your brain automatically sounds the alarm, meaning that circle is essentially an energy-consuming black hole. Friedrich Nietzsche criticized the last man in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, referring precisely to those who have lost their self-will and are willing to become vassals of the group. You think that constantly adjusting yourself to fit in with others is a sign of maturity, but in fact you are enacting the pendulum-like tragedy of existence described by Arthur Schopenhauer, yearning for freedom on one hand yet voluntarily putting on the shackles of the group on the other, swinging back and forth between the poles of seeking approval and losing oneself. Modern society has meticulously woven an invisible net of discipline. Social media quantifies your value with the number of likes. Consumerism packages goods as social passes, and workplace culture distorts team spirit into absolute obedience. You think you are actively choosing your social style, but you are actually just a cog in the cultural machine, operating mechanically according to pre-spec programs. When you replace genuine expressions with trendy jargon and cover up inner resistance with standardized smiles, your soul is undergoing a silent spiritual castration. What's even more terrifying is that this self-alienation is being passed down through generations. Have you noticed that your expectations for your children are gradually becoming standardized? Templates of being popular and being sociable. How many vivid souls will this mass self-erasure devour before you realize that the so-called fitting in has long since transformed from a survival instinct into spiritual violence? Do you think those harmless compromises to fit in are just minor episodes in life? But cognitive Nenpo has already revealed a cruel truth. When you constantly suppress your true thoughts to cater to others, the activity level of the brain's default mode network will continue to decline. The region responsible for self-reflection and the inner world is gradually atrophying due to your voluntary neglect. Just like a frog boiled in warm water, every time you give up self-expression, you are pushing yourself deeper into the abyss of becoming a hollow person. Sociologist Zygmunt Bauman's theory of liquid modernity is vividly demonstrated in this group alienation. You switch masks in different social scenarios, pretending to be a dedicated employee in the work group, a successful person at the class reunion, and a perfect child in the family group. But when all these masks overlap, can you still find the real face beneath them? What's even more terrifying is that this collective self-suppression is reshaping the social structure. When more and more people give up independent thinking, the public opinion field becomes a racecourse for emotions, and truth and reason are completely crushed in the blind carnival of conformity. Remember the Stanford prison experiment? Ordinary people under the influence of group rules can quickly transform into abusers or submissive lambs. You might say, I would never go to such extremes. But those moments when you give up your principles to fit in, those instances when you remain silent, despite knowing something is wrong, aren't they essentially betrayals of yourself? This spiritual self-castration not only robs you of the casting, their spiritual self-castration not only robs you of the courage to create. When you teach your children, don't be too different, and it's safer to follow the crowd. At this moment, do you still dare to say that fitting in is just a personal choice? This net, woven by culture, institutions, and human weaknesses, is quietly dragging the entire society into the quagmire of collective mediocrity. And are you really willing to be an accomplice in this spiritual suicide? To break free from the shackles of fitting in? Perhaps you need to become Nietzsche's Übermensch. Not in terms of physical dominance, but in the spiritual awakening that dares to say no to group discipline. When you realize that true belonging never comes from external approval, but from the complete acceptance of yourself. This rebellion has quietly begun. Just as Carl Jung in his later years cut off all external expectations when he secluded himself to create the Red Book, exiling himself to the wilderness of the subconscious, yet ultimately found the integrity of his soul in solitude, taught to reconstruct. Your social relatus, the Sota, emphasized that man is condemned to be free, and you have the power to define your own social boundaries. When the conversation at a gathering makes you uncomfortable, instead of saying, I should go along with it, be honest and say, this isn't something I am interested in. When the false prosperity of social media makes you anxious, turn off the like notifications and focus on deep resonance with a few kindred spirits. These seemingly unsociable choices are actually the first step in taking back control of your life. Throughout history, those who truly understood life were all examples of being unsociable. Socrates questioned public opinion on the streets of Athens and was ultimately forced to drink poison. Vincent van Gogh used intense colors to confront worldly aesthetics and only sold one painting during his lifetime. Although they seemed to be abandoned by the times, by adhering to their true selves, they became beacons illuminating the human spiritual world. You don't have to be a great person, but at least you can refuse to be part of the silent majority and be the sole ruler of your own spiritual kingdom. This rebellion may leave you temporarily alone. But just as Camus described the stone pusher in the myth of Sisyphus, when you face the absurdity and make active choices, that conscious pain is closer to the essence of freedom than numb conformity. Are you ready to declare war on the whole world for your true self?